We ever walked into a store and felt like you stepped into a movie set? If you ever visited a Fry's Electronics, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Imagine a giant UFO crashed into the front of a building, or walking through the gates of an Aztec temple just to buy a graphics card. That was Fry's. It wasn't just a store. It was an experience, a wonderland for tech geeks and nerds. But then, almost overnight, it all vanished. The themed aisles, the incredible selection, the weirdly specific components you couldn't find anywhere else gone. Today, we're diving into the bizarre and frankly sad story of Fry's Electronics, and how this retail giant, known for its wacky themes and massive stores, crumbled in one of the strangest collapses in tech retail history. What really happened behind those Mayan temples and space-themed facades? Let's find out. Fry's was founded back in 1985 in Sunnyvale, California, by the three Fry brothers John Randy and David Long with a former girlfriend, Catherine Calder. Their father, Charles Fry, had sold his supermarket chain for a cool $14 million and gave each of his sons $1 million to start their own venture. Their idea was simple but brilliant: create a one-stop shop for all things electronic, a supermarket for Silicon Valley's engineers and hobbyists. This was the heart of the tech boom, and Fry's was perfectly positioned. It didn't just sell computers and TVs. They sold everything: capacitors, resistors, motherboards, obscure cables. If you needed it to build, fix, or hack something, Fry's had it. This made them legendary among the tech-savvy crowd. You could literally walk in with a schematic and walk out with every single component needed to build your project. It was a tinkerer's paradise. But what truly set Fry's apart, what made it iconic, were the store themes. This wasn't just a poster on a wall. They went all out. The Burbank store had a 50s sci-fi theme, complete with a crashed flying saucer and little green aliens. San Jose's store was a full-on Mayan temple. Head to Houston, and you'd find yourself exploring the history of Texas oil drilling. My personal favorite was the Egyptian tomb theme in Campbell. They spent millions on these designs, turning a simple shopping trip into an adventure. It was a spectacle, a destination. You'd bring your friends, your family, just to show them how crazy and cool this electronics store was. This unique branding created a cult-like following. People loved Fry's not just for what it sold, but for what it was. It was a physical embodiment of the fun, creative, and slightly eccentric spirit of Silicon Valley. For years, this formula was a massive success. At its peak, Fry's operated 34 massive stores across 9 states and employed over 14,000 people. They were pulling in billions in revenue. They were the undisputed kings of big-box tech retail, a place where you could find both a brand-new laptop and the niche components to repair a vintage synthesizer. Their newspaper ads were legendary too, dense, chaotic, and packed with deals that would have people lining up before the doors even opened. They were a cultural touchstone. If you grew up in a city with a Fry's, you have memories of that place. It was more than a store. It was a landmark. But as the 2000s rolled on, the ground beneath their elaborate theme park stores began to shift. The very thing that made them famous, their massive, sprawling physical locations, was about to become their biggest liability. The first signs of trouble began to surface in the late 2000s and early 2010s. The rise of e-commerce, particularly Amazon and Noog, was a game-changer. Why drive to a giant store and wander through aisles when you could find the exact same component, often cheaper, with a few clicks and have it delivered to your door? Noog, in particular, targeted Fry's core demographic, the PC builders and DIY enthusiasts. They offered a massive selection, competitive pricing, and user reviews, all without the overhead of a giant Mayan temple. Fry's model was built on being the one place with everything, but now, the internet was that place, and it was infinitely larger. Their huge stores, once a massive draw, were now just massive expenses. The cost of electricity, rent, and staffing for a 150,000 square foot store is astronomical, especially when your customers are increasingly shopping from their couches. But the problems went deeper than just online competition. Fry's had a notoriously unique business model, and it started to backfire. They operated primarily on a consignment basis. This means they didn't actually buy a lot of the inventory on their shelves. Instead, suppliers would place their products in the store, and Fry's would only pay them after the product was sold. For a long time, this was a genius move. It minimized Fry's financial risk and allowed them to stock an incredible variety of products. If something didn't sell, it was the supplier's problem, not theirs. But as sales started to decline, this model created a death spiral. Suppliers weren't getting paid because products weren't moving. So, what did they do? They stopped sending products. This is why, in the final years, the trip to Fry's became so surreal and depressing. You'd walk into this colossal themed building, and the shelves would be almost completely bare. Aisle after aisle of empty pegboards and barren displays. It was like a retail ghost town. The few items left were often random, unwanted products. It became a meme online. With people posting pictures of the Fry's wasteland, customers would go in looking for a specific item advertised online, only to find the store had zero stock. The company's official line was that they were shifting from a consignment model to a direct buy model, and this was just a temporary transition. They insisted they weren't going out of business, but anyone who walked into a store could see the writing on the wall. The transition never happened. The shelves just got emptier. This slow, painful decline, this hollowing out process, is what made the collapse so weird. It wasn't a sudden bankruptcy. It was a gradual, public decay. On top of the external pressures and the failing business model, there were internal issues as well. The company was notoriously private and family-run. This can be a strength, but it also meant they were slow to adapt. While Best Buy was successfully pivoting to a showroom model and integrating its online and physical stores, Fry's seemed stuck in the 90s. Their website was clunky and outdated, and their customer service had a reputation for being, let's say, inconsistent. There were also allegations of shady business practices and a high-pressure sales culture that alienated some customers. One of the Fry brothers even had a major legal issue involving millions in embezzled funds, which certainly didn't help the company's image or finances. It seemed like a perfect storm of mismanagement, a refusal to evolve, and intense competition. The end finally came on February 24, 2021. Without any real warning, the Fry's website was replaced with a simple, stark message announcing that they were ceasing operations and closing all their stores, effective immediately. The reason cited was the challenges of the changing retail landscape and the added difficulties of the COVID-19 pandemic. For thousands of employees, it was a sudden end. For loyal customers, it was the official death of an era. The pandemic was the final nail in the coffin, but the coffin had been under construction for over a decade. The once bustling wonderlands of tech were now just empty themed buildings, monuments to a bygone era of retail. So what's the legacy of Fry's Electronics? It's a cautionary tale about the importance of adaptation. They built an empire on a unique, experience-driven model, but they failed to see that the customer experience was moving online. Their refusal to modernize their e-commerce, their stubborn adherence to an outdated business model, and their inability to shrink their massive physical footprint all led to their demise. It's a classic story of a giant that got too big and too slow to change with the times. But for those of us who remember it in its glory days, it's more than just a business case study. We lost something special. We lost the thrill of walking into an alien spaceship to buy a new hard drive. We lost a community hub for nerds, a place where you could spend hours just browsing and dreaming up your next project.